assault on the Arizona economy. And it's going to cost us tens of thousands of jobs here.
Tonight, unease about some of what a future Trump administration means for the West. Others, though, confident the president-elect understands this region's role in helping to drive the nation's economy.
They'll see the importance to national security, economic security, and honestly, just continuing to have that passion for building things in America.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to West Coast Wrap. I'm Alex Savage. People all across the West are keeping a close eye on the early decisions being made by President-elect Donald Trump and the team that's taking shape around him. From the border to the future of tech and the overall economy, the implications of this election will be widespread. With one appointment, President-elect Trump made it clear he is making immigration enforcement a top priority and plans to follow through with mass deportations. Trump named Tom Homan the country's next border czar. Homan, a former Border Patrol agent, was the acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement during the first Trump administration. Homan insists carrying out the largest deportation operation in the nation's history can be done in a humane way.
I've been clear, President Trump's been clear. Public safety threats and national security threats will be the priority because they have to be. They pose the most danger to this country. So we're going to prioritize those groups, those who always have final orders, those that had due process.
Now, the other person expected to influence the next Trump administration's border security policy is Stephen Miller. Today, the president-elect announced the immigration hardliner would become his deputy chief of staff for policy. Miller was a senior advisor during the first Trump administration and supported the separation of thousands of immigrant families. Neither of these positions requires Senate confirmation. For more perspective, let's bring in Bill Hing tonight, who's a professor of law and migration studies at the University of San Francisco and also the author of the book Humanizing Immigration. Professor, we always appreciate the time. Let's start with these two appointments that relate to immigration policy here. Stephen Miller and Tom Homan expected to work closely together to oversee widespread deportations in this country. Give us a sense of how immigration enforcement is going to look different during the second Trump administration.
Well, you know, they've got experience and they're doing more research. I think that we're going to immediately see a termination of DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. I think we're going to also see immediately an expanding of something called expedited removal. So anybody in the country who's undocumented, who has not lived here for more than 2 years, they can be deported without a hearing. The DACA recipients, they're going to have a right to a hearing, but that means over a period of months, something like more than 500,000 DACA recipients are going to lose their protection from deportation, and the government has their addresses, and so I think they're going to go after that group for sure.
Yeah, because the question always arises, how do you identify people who are in this country and not permitted to be here? But in the case of DACA recipients, so-called dreamers, all their information is with the federal government. That's
right. I don't think that we're going to see ICE agents walking up and down Main Street asking people for documents. I don't think they're going to see that, and I don't think that federal courts would allow that kind of racial profiling and due process violations. But every once in a while, they'll have names and addresses of people at a workplace or at an apartment building, and they will go to that workplace or apartment building and ask for that person. And while they're there, they may ask other workers or residents for their immigration documents. So that's going to foment some fear.
Sure. And this the new border czar, Tom Homan, has said that the administration's mass deportation operation will focus first on undocumented immigrants who are public safety threats. This would be people who have committed other crimes while in this country. But obviously he has left the door open to deporting anyone who is not permitted to be in this country. What do you anticipate we will see in terms of more widespread sort of enforcement and potentially these workplace raids? Is that a possibility?
I think the workplace raids are definitely more possible because, unfortunately, a lot of times leads are called into ICE, right, where somebody will say, I'm pretty sure that this company has undocumented workers there, and that's all that ICE needs to act on it. They'll go in and they'll start asking people for documents. And the public, maybe not in California, although it can happen in California too, but there are definitely parts of the country and maybe in parts of California where people are going to be calling and saying, I think my next door neighbor is undocumented. I've seen that before. And depending on the ICE office, they may act on those kinds of hunches.
Yeah. We know obviously that there are cities, obviously, and jurisdictions in this country that are sanctuary jurisdictions that refuse to cooperate with federal immigration officials when it comes to these kinds of enforcement actions. What kind of sort of clashes do you see playing out between the federal government and state and local governments?
Well, that's a good question. And Governor Newsom has said he wants to do whatever he can to prevent these massive kinds of raids. The problem with a sanctuary ordinance is you can't stop ICE from coming in, but if you don't have any information to share, that can stop ICE in its tracks. So ICE can ask the police or the sheriff, hey, what about John Doe? Is he undocumented or not? And if you don't have that information, then there's nothing to share. And so that's the key to sanctuary, is that officials do not ask people about their immigration status. And if they don't have that, then you can't share that. So that's how sanctuary ordinances are helpful.
Yeah, and another issue here is that, if you start to try to deport large numbers of people, you have to have countries that would agree to take citizens back here. And I'm curious to get your perspective. How much of a logistical challenge does that become for the U.S. government, especially when you talk about countries like Venezuela that the U.S. has no diplomatic relations with?
That's a great question. You cannot just put people on an airplane and send them to a country. You have to have the permission of those countries to accept them. And that's a great example. If El Salvador doesn't want the 300 or 400 Venezuelans, rather, that you picked up, then there's nowhere to send them. And if they haven't committed any crimes, then you've got to let those folks go. And so it's going to wreak havoc. And Trump also wants to impose this Remain in Mexico policy, where migrants who are applying for asylum from El Salvador, Guatemala, Haiti, Cameroon are at the southern border. But the new president of Mexico isn't necessarily going to cooperate. You cannot force these migrants to stay in Mexico if they're applying for asylum in the U.S. if Mexico won't allow that. So that's another logistical problem that the Trump administration is going to face.
Yeah, certainly a lot of challenges and a lot of hurdles with these planned immigration enforcement actions. We appreciate your perspective, as always, Professor Bill Hing from the University of San Francisco. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Today, the price of Bitcoin hit a new record as cryptocurrencies are on the rise after the election of Donald Trump. Bitcoin rose above $87,000 for the first time. President-elect Trump has pledged to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world. While Wall Street has been enthusiastic about Trump's return to the White House, analysts say it's not clear what effect the administration will have on the U.S. economy. There are questions about Trump's promises of new tariffs on foreign goods and his proposal to deport millions of undocumented immigrants.
You could get a recession pretty quickly if the tariffs became real and the mass deportations become real. And those sorts of ructions would combine an economic recession with a stock market downturn of considerable proportions.
Investors have been driving up shares of financial stocks. Traders believe that banks will see less regulation from Washington, and that will fuel an increase in mergers and acquisitions. On Wall Street today, the Dow was up by 304 points for a new record. The Nasdaq added 12 points, and the S&P ticked up by 5 points. Shares in Tesla were up by 9% today, as CEO Elon Musk continues to demonstrate his close ties to President-elect Trump. In Arizona, there are concerns the incoming Trump administration could potentially gut the state's booming semiconductor business. Fox 10's Steve Nielsen spoke with experts in the industry about whether they see tough times ahead.
The current president made Arizona a focus of the CHIPS Act.
I'll be darned. So you're bringing the future back to America, man.
In 2022, Joe Biden marked the act by speaking at Taiwan Semiconductor's under-construction plant in Phoenix. Earlier this year, he toured Intel's multi-billion-dollar investment in Chandler.
This is going to transform the country in a way you don't even understand yet.
Days before Donald Trump was elected, he said the act, which lured companies with billions of dollars to build chips in America, was bad, suggesting tariffs would have been cheaper.
Is a direct assault on the Arizona economy. And it's going to cost us tens of thousands of jobs here.
That's U.S. Senator Mark Kelly. He told me one-on-one how important he believes the act is.
We're talking about an investment from private companies of $100 billion in our state. It's the biggest investment this state has ever seen in any industry.
It's not just the massive chip makers that benefit.
But we are a very critical element to making this technology work.
Brian Sinclair with AGC Multi-Material America in Tempe says they manufacture the materials for circuits that chips are attached to. Despite Trump's comments, there's no indication the act would be repealed. Sinclair actually sees it expanding.
The situation in boards and substrates is at least as bad as it was in chips. At least. And to regain that capability is going to take a lot more effort in a way.
Arizona has become the global semiconductor manufacturing hub of the entire world right now.
The Arizona Chamber of Commerce agreed that the act is pivotal and isn't concerned by the president-elect's comments during the campaign.
When he gets back in office, he'll see the importance to national security, economic security, and honestly, just continuing to have that passion for building things in America. We need things like the Chips and Science Act. So no, I don't think it's going anywhere.
To really show you what a hot button issue this has become, Speaker Mike Johnson, just a few weeks ago, he said that he would look to repeal the CHIPS Act in a Trump administration. It took less than 24 hours for him to walk that back, saying not repeal, streamline. Steve Nielsen, Fox 10 News.
And for the latest election results and perspective on how the election is affecting communities across the West, you can head to our website. It's westcoastwrap.com. Our online coverage includes a breakdown of who President-elect Trump has selected for some key positions in his administration. Coming up tonight, here on West Coast Wrap, a scary scene in Arizona as a toddler wanders into a busy street. And coming up tonight, we'll tell you what the father of that child has to say about the Good Samaritan who got his son to safety. Plus, the man suspected of carrying out a series of random stabbings in Seattle appears in court today. We'll break down what we're learning now about the suspect.
And West Coast rain headed our way. We'll talk about that coming up.
Rainfall today helped fire crews fighting a new wildfire in Nevada. The Callahan fire started burning southwest of Reno this morning. It forced the evacuation of hundreds of homes and businesses in the Montreux area. Many of those evacuees are already being allowed to return back home. There's no word tonight on any homes being damaged in this fire. The flames did char about 100 acres of thick brush and vegetation, and authorities tonight are still investigating the cause of that wildfire. In Southern California, firefighters are making progress slowing the spread of another fire that has destroyed more than 200 buildings, most of them homes. The mountain fire has grown only about 100 acres in the past few days, and it stands tonight at 36% containment. Fox 11's Haley Winslow spoke with victims returning to neighborhoods that they barely recognize.
And as I was leaving, I looked out of the corner of my eye and there was this red ball over here, and I wasn't sure if it was the sun coming through the black clouds. And we're used to the Santa Anas here.
Las Posas Estates now unrecognizable. Home after home burned to the ground. Lost dog and we will rebuild signs. The American Red Cross posted up on the corner. Nearly every vehicle, a utility or fire truck, or a family like Angela DeChico's, coming home to sheer devastation.
I'm the artistic director at the Elite Theater Company in Oxnard. 50 years worth of files, 50 years worth of collecting scripts, my family photographs.
Melted down to memories, the last of which here are pretty traumatic.
Look around, I see my neighbors across the way, these two neighbors, the homes are gone, chatting to each other. And I look around and there is a fire truck over here, like a van. And I go and knocked on the door on his window, and he was shocked. He goes, and I said, oh, I'm sorry to bother you, but are we being evacuated? And he said, you gotta get out of here. And then I get to my friends and she goes, your neighborhood's on the news. She called me, she goes, have you been back up there? I said, I just came down. She goes, the house is gone. The house is gone. And I went, what? And then we watched the news a little while, and we could see the whole neighborhood. And you couldn't tell what was what. You couldn't tell if it was our house, if it was our neighbor's house.
Across the street, the McLaurin's home also turned to ashes. Dana McLaurin shows us the burn scars on his head. The former LA City firefighter in his early 80s spent hours trying to save his house with all he had, his garden hose.
After 37 and a half years putting them out, now I are one. We had a Cal Fire crew come here and start digging, and my daughter-in-law were working over around the wall there where I had all my Medal of Valor and badges, and they actually found them all. The ribbons were burned off, but they did find the badges.
Ventura County Fire Battalion Chief Robert Wellsby is part of that task force, helping families dig through the rubble.
Well, it can be actually a really emotional experience where shoulder to shoulder with the homeowners as they express their grief, express their sadness, express their anger, express everything in between.
And that was Fox 11's Haley Winslow reporting for us tonight. The cause of the mountain fire in Ventura County is still under investigation. We shift now to talk about our weather here in the West, and there is enough snow on Mount Hood in Oregon for the famous Timberline Lodge to open up its season. Here's a live look tonight at the conditions. You can see plenty of snow there at the bottom of that lift. Timberline became the first Mount Hood resort to open up over this past weekend. Mount Hood Meadows is planning to open up later on this month. For more, let's bring in KTVU meteorologist Bill Martin, who is tracking the winter-like conditions across the West. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, definitely wet out there. We're going to continue with some scattered showers as we go into the next, couple of days. The West Coast is headed for some rainfall. Let's see if we can get it in here, and we see you've got, let's go to weather 2 on this computer here. That'll help me out quite a bit. We are looking at scattered showers throughout the area. The scattered showers will continue along the west coast of the United States, and we'll see showers like on the mountain fire. We'll see showers in, hey, let's go to weather 2, and then I'll get on the correct graphics here if we can. We'll see more scattered showers onto the mountain fire zone. We'll see, there we go. These are the forecast rainfall accumulations that we're expecting over the next couple of days. You can see that you've got most of the activity to the north and a little less to the south, but still is going to help out quite a bit. Hey, listen, the highs today in Seattle, 52 degrees. It was wet in Seattle at 52 degrees. We are looking for temperatures tomorrow to be about the same. San Francisco hit 60 degrees. San Francisco got about 1/4 inch of rain. And with that rainfall, the fire danger getting much better, much better in terms of concerns for fire, because this is the time of year, you get the Santa Anas and the offshore winds. Highs today in Phoenix, 84 degrees. That rain or the scattered showers are going to work their way in that direction. And so Phoenix, instead of being in the upper 80s, is going to be in the 70s the next couple of days as the whole West Coast gets set up with a bit of a weather system that'll be, again, kind of covering Seattle all the way south. And it's kind of a winter deal, right? I mean, it's starting to feel like it. The jet stream's moving further south. Large surf along the California coast will actually begin starting pretty much today and tomorrow. And the next day, we'll see 10 to 15-foot swells up around Mavericks in Northern California. We'll see surf up in Seattle as well. And that is an indication of a very healthy storm center. So with that in mind, we've got scattered showers. We get back into Wednesday and Thursday. We're looking for the opportunity for more scattered showers throughout much of Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. Down south, down towards Phoenix and Los Angeles, not so much, but still cooler, milder weather and lessened fire danger.
All right, that is certainly a good thing. Bill, thank you. In Washington, a judge has set bail for Roland Lee, the man suspected of stabbing 9 people at random in Seattle last week. His bail set at $2 million today by a judge. Investigators say early Thursday and early Friday, 5 people were stabbed around the Chinatown International District in Seattle. And then later on Friday, 5 more people were stabbed in another part of the city. Several victims were hospitalized. Lee has not been charged yet. Court documents show that he does have an extensive criminal record in the state of Washington. Some terrifying moments caught on a dash camera in Arizona. Fox 10's Kenzie Beach tonight shows us how drivers were swerving to avoid hitting a toddler who wandered onto a busy street in Mesa.
It was right here on this corner behind me where a 2-year-old little boy wandered into this street. The speed limit here is 45 miles an hour. This little boy is lucky to be alive tonight. It all started with a Ring doorbell alert.
And I see my door wide open with some lady holding my child, and she tells me that I have my kids running in the middle of the street.
The news came as a shock to this father, but the dash cam footage of what happened was even more terrifying.
No! Stop! No, my God, stop! No! Stop! Oh my God! No! What the
Drivers swerving out of the way on a busy Mesa street as they just barely avoid hitting a toddler, the young child running into the road wearing only a diaper.
Gets into the middle of the intersection while the light is green, so if he was not seen, which he probably wasn't because I saw a car in the next lane just go right past him, it's pretty scary.
Scary moments too for other drivers.
whose baby is that? Oh my God!
Alex Shaybell says he was at work at the time. His toddler and 9-month-old baby were left in the care of their mother. After his disbelief wore off, the father was left only feeling gratitude toward the Good Samaritan who saved their child.
A thankful resident of the area saw them and got them out of harm's way, which I'm incredibly grateful for. I didn't quite get her name, but I'd like to thank her personally.
The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office tells us the mother is in custody tonight and charges are pending for child endangerment. That 2-year-old little boy also has a 9-month-old sibling that also wandered off into the street. So Child Protective Services has been contacted in this case. In Mesa tonight, Kenzie Beach, Fox 10 News.
Coming up tonight on West Coast Wrap, Veterans Day events happening all across the West. Tonight, a look at how people are honoring those who have served this country in the military. Across the West today, people marked Veterans Day with events honoring military service members. President Biden led the national tribute with a somber ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery.
It's been the greatest honor of my life to lead you, to serve you, to care for you, to defend you, just as you defended us. We have many obligations, but only one truly sacred obligation. Sacred. To prepare those we send into harm's way and to care for them and their families when they return home and when they don't.
Today's ceremony included a traditional laying of the wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Finally tonight, winter has started early in Colorado Springs as a community welcomed the cold weather with a snowball fight. Hundreds of people went to a park over the weekend to hurl snowballs and enjoy the winter weather. Organizers interested snowball throwers to be prepared for plenty of dodging and throwing. There is nothing better than a good snowball fight, certainly signaling the start of winter soon. That does it for West Coast Wrap. Have a great night.